Sorry, I don't know why my camera's off. There we go.
Oh, you're okay. We're good. We're good to go now. Man, look at, can you hear me and see me okay?
Yeah, I can see you and hear you fine. Is my sound okay?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you sound incredible and the background looks even cooler. Can you please explain to me and the audience what's going on in Steve Hall's room right now?
So yeah, in the background, you can see my lap pull down first of all because COVID hit and I needed to turn this spare bedroom into my office and the spare bedroom and also my gym. And then I have actually my mum got me a Philips light and you can press a button on it and it changes colors. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to use this light for. And then I was like, man, it looks so cool in the back of videos. So
It really does. It's and then you've got the what's it called? Are they called blue blockers or I know they're for sleep and to block the blue light, but I didn't know what
so
they're called.
these are blue light blockers. They are like daytime ones. So I just call them slightly more socially acceptable blue light blockers.
Dude, they're cool.
Uh,
They're like aviators.
yeah. So I'm like, yeah, they're kind of yellow, like they don't look too weird. So
I
I kind
remember
of
I remember the old Steve shades. They looked like lawn mowing glasses, except they were like bright amber colored.
yeah, I had the ones my sister would say I look like a bug, like with those ones, which they did the job. But now there's like really nice looking ones on the market, and I'm lucky enough to have this. And then I have some really dark orange ones that I wear like before bed. But these are good when it like you need good lighting for like podcasts and it's visual. So I've got like a light coming on me here, light on me here, and I've got the setup. It's got to look good. So
No, it's perfect. You're big time now, Steve. This is great. What I did yesterday was I went through and listened to our podcast episode. It was about a year and a half ago actually, because
wow.
you were like my third or fourth podcast guest
Oh,
ever
cool.
on this podcast, and I'm coming up on my 100th episode. So
Very cool.
it's exciting. So I wanted to get some of the OGs back around episode 100, and we hadn't chatted in a while, and I've seen. Of course, I follow. We can go ahead and get into things. I've followed you for quite some time. We've connected back and forth, and as I said on the last podcast as well, you're always Revive Stronger, and then the guys over at RP at Renaissance Periodization are my go-to people who I just like. I trust your credibility. I trust your integrity. I trust that you are genuinely interested in finding out the truth for the best results, and putting that first over making money or building a following or something like that. So yeah, just want to say kudos, thanks for all you do, and thanks again for coming on the show, man. Happy to have you here.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. And I can't believe the time has gone so fast. And I really appreciate, like, it means a lot to me to be put in like a category close to where our PR with things, because I mean, I'd love to be in a position where I'm funding research, like they're giving grants like Brad Schoenfeld and people. I'm like, man, they're doing big things over there. So in any little way that we can help kind of further that truth and spread that good knowledge, I'm happy to be there kind of helping do that.
Yeah, you're doing it, man. You're definitely doing it. It's so like you're also one of the people that I love following, not only from a business standpoint and like watching your following grow, and then now see you with the membership site and stuff that you've got going on. You've got a lot of different things going on, but then also your physique. Like you are 100% practicing what you preach, and your physique has just blown up. But and I want to get into that in just a second. But first, just for the people who don't know you, just give the quick elevator pitch, the quick rundown. What is it that you tell people that you do?
Yeah, it's like it depends who's listening, right? It's like at Christmas when I'm like talking to, I don't know, my mother-in-law, or well, she's not my mother-in-law yet, but that sort of thing. It's like, so how's the job going? What are you doing? But I think they generally have a somewhat of a good understanding, but to the audience who will understand. So yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'm an online coach. That's what I spend most of my time doing, is helping people change their body for the better. But also I find more and more my time is spent also educating along that path. You probably find it the same where, yeah, I mean, fat loss is great, muscle gain is great, but actually a lot of my time spent getting them to understand how they're achieving that so they can go and take that away. And a lot of the people I end up coaching are coaches or personal trainers who want, and they've almost signed up because they want to learn a lot. They also want to get jacked and stuff.
It's smart though. It's smart. I think it's really smart when coaches do that. They've done that some with me, but I can imagine how many actually do it with you for the learning experience.
For sure. I am the same. Like, there's one thing hearing kind of literature and all that, but once you put it into practice, you actually go through it, you're like, oh, okay, so this is what like progressive overload looks like on paper, or this is how fatigue management might look, and specificity and those sort of like just principles. You're like, okay, and this is how it's all put together on like an online coaching platform. And obviously this year in particular, that's grown probably like wildfire, hopefully in a positive way. But yeah, so first and foremost, that's what I do most of my time, is helping people do that. I also would say I'm a content provider. So with the Revive Stronger podcast, which is going real strong, and I just love doing that. And it's a great way to connect with people and also spread further knowledge, and also educate myself at the same time, and just have fun chats, keep myself kind of in like with everyone, and kind of up to date with stuff, which is really great. And then that's the main two things I do. I'm also a natural bodybuilder. I'm okay. I'm trying to be my best I can, dude, like everyone else.
This is a perfect segue, because this is what. So first off, everything that Steve just said, he's underselling him. Everything that he does, the content production, the coaching, the type of information he puts out is just it's spectacular. It's very intelligent and articulate, but then it's also, I think you do a really good job of actually getting the point across, and not staying too much in the clouds, and actually giving people digestible information that they can put into application. So I did want to commend you for that as well.
I appreciate that a lot. It is sometimes you feel like you're repeating yourself, or you're making it, you're not sure if people are understanding the kind of comments. And over time, I guess you become better at doing it. And also, I think probably for me, because I'm not an expert or like I'm a personal trainer, essentially I'm a practitioner in the field. I'm not a researcher. So for me to understand what the researchers and the people, like the super smart people, are saying, I have to dumb it down for me. So then I'm like, oh, now I've dumbed it down for me. Now, hopefully, maybe other people can take what I say and learn it.
But what's interesting though is the stuff that we say whenever it comes to muscle building and fat loss. You're going to be a little bit more in the weeds than like me and my audience, because I don't work as much with bodybuilders and competitors and things like that. But it's kind of just like, you kind of just say the same thing like 10,000 different ways, right? Like it's kind of, you're always getting back. I notice with your messaging, it's consistency, it's managing fatigue. It's just like doing the basic stuff that works over and over again, and then figuring out how to serve that on a platter in maybe a different way, or a different filter, or a different worldview, so that your audience can finally, it's like they might have seen it 5 times, but then that 6th time you said it that certain way, and then it actually clicked, right?
That's exactly it. And that's what I always tell, if someone feels like they're just repeating like content that's out there, like if they're, not that I'm a business coach at all, but sometimes I get asked these questions. I'm just like, yeah, it's been said a million times, but you might have a few different followers who don't follow these other people, and you might just say it in a way that kind of clicks with that individual. So I'm more than happy to repeat. Also, people forget the basics all the time, and they need that kick up the arse and that reminder. Like I need it, and it's great posting about it because it reminds me of it. So especially when like the Instagram in particular, there's just like new information being thrown at you all the time. You've even got like literally like published research being put up there like on a daily basis that's new and flashy, and you like see all these things. And so I like to be that guy that's just like plugging home the basic message now and then, just so that people are aware of like what really truly matters before you look at kind of the real nuanced fancy stuff, which is also cool. And like I said, I think you do a great job of it. And people, even if they have heard it tons of times, it also might be the situation that they're in with their life, right? Like just whatever's going on in that moment, or in that day, or even in that hour, they needed to see whatever, that one post about something that they just forgot about, or they needed to do at that moment. I think this is where you see people like Jordan Syatt or something. He just talks about consistency and like getting over like your if you fuck up, like it's okay, just move on. Like he just
consistently hammers that home over and over again. And I think for his audience, and more in particular, that can hit home for a lot of people. But yeah, I think your content, whenever I'm thinking like, even like a post about arms or something, because I'm always trying to figure out different, because I know you have amazing arms, and I'm always like, what's Steve got to say about this? And so I see you make a post about that, and then I'm just like, yes, I need to remember to do that. And it's even something in the back of my head, but I haven't been doing consistently. So yeah, that's I like that you keep hammering home the basics, and you do a really good job of it.
I just need to wait for my like hundreds of thousands of followers to come. Like Jordan, so I saw Jordan, I mean, and credit to him, it's not like he came out of the woodwork and suddenly had hundreds of thousands of followers. He's been in the industry a long time and doing great work for a long, consistent time. So it's so good to see someone like that get such a large following. So yeah, I'm glad that those are the messages he's plugging, because they're very simple stuff, but they're some of the things people, and especially more Gen Pop, screw up a lot, and they kind of feel that, especially like flexible dieting is such a great concept, but again, people really struggle with it. So yeah, I'm glad he's doing that, and I'm glad that I'm on some level doing it maybe for a little bit of a more niche audience. But
yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you're definitely, I feel like you're doing it more so for the more intermediate to advanced lifters, and yeah, like I said, you do a great job of that. And I think this is actually a good little segue into you know what? First, actually, real quick, I want to touch on the. So, are you dieting for a competition right now?
Not yet.
You're not?
So
fill me in on that. Fill me in on that real quick.
Yeah, I had not, it hadn't become a tradition by any means, but I competed. 2014 was my first showing. Then I competed in 2017. I wanted to compete this year, but I think it was definitely the right call not to, because who knew whether or not shows are going ahead. And I actually just wasn't, I'd set myself up to compete in a certain time, and shows got pushed back, and I just would have like been really worn out or very stressed. And I am the type of guy that gets a little bit anxious about things moving around and dates changing. And I like a plan to stay the same. So, or stay somewhat steady. So it would have stressed the shit out of me. So yeah, next year's now on the cards. So I basically cut my fat loss phase early, because there was no point continuing to diet through that. And I've been gaining ever since then. And I actually recently finished a mini cut about a month ago, and now I'm back into kind of gaining, and I will do until the end of April. Then I'll maintain through April until the end of May, till May. And then I start a like 20 odd week contest prep in May next year, which is quite late in the season. So I could start earlier if I decide like I'm looking a bit soft, but I have a pattern of being ready a little early potentially, or at least certainly don't struggle with condition generally, and it's more so size that I've struggled with. So I'm just hedging my bets to make sure I've got as much size to come down, because I'm not too concerned about the condition side, because that's something that I'm comfortable with. Just kind of once I'm in prep mode, it's just a case of like just chipping away everywhere. So more of that consistency message and just chipping away every day, and that's something I thrive with.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exciting. I'm stoked to just watch the journey, because that's always fun whenever somebody you know quite closely is just beginning that journey, and then you can see throughout the entire prep and stuff. So I'm sure you're excited at that. Do you have like an end goal with any of this, or are you just competing for the sake of competing, just because you love the competition? You also want to walk the walk, right, for the people that you work with and things. But is there any type of deeper motives behind like why you really want to compete in bodybuilding?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think anyone who competes like you did, you have to have a good reason to start that. Because I mean, like I say, like I'm kind of dismissing how hard it is to get to those levels of condition, but even for the most robotic individual like I might be, there's times in which I'm questioning what the fuck am I doing, and I feel like I'm dying or something's just very wrong. So to kind of grit through those days, you need to have a good reason why. I like the saying, I don't know where I heard it, but it's like, with a strong enough why, you can do any how. And so that's why that why to me is so important. And when I first competed, my why was I want to kind of prove to myself that I'm now fully recovered and in a position where I can recover again from contest prep afterwards, because of my accident. And I was kind of always feeling a little bit frail in some way, and just kind of wanted to prove to myself like, no, you can do something very extreme to your body and you can recover from it. And ever since having done that contest prep, I feel like, don't know, not indestructible, but I'm very confident about what I can put my body through and what I can achieve in life. Because like doing that after that accident was like, to a lot of people seem crazy, but to me now, just looking back, I'm like, it's the best thing I've ever done. And then ever since, it's a case of, like you said there, it's a case of like going through, because I want to coach people through this. I learn something every time I do it, kind of practicing what I preach. And I just love the process of bodybuilding, and kind of always, every day, doesn't matter if, my dog's like sick, or I lose 5 clients or something. As long as I've got kind of bodybuilding there, where I'm like, I know I've kind of eaten what I needed to eat. I've done my training. I've progressed that. I've kind of deposited those pennies, as Jeff Alberts would say. Like, I feel like I've achieved something. And I just, that every single day, having that and having that pursuit each day and waking up knowing I've got that, not that it's at like the forefront of my mind every day,
sure,
like some obsessive individual, like every day I'm like, pro card on my whiteboard, pro card, which I remember Matt Ogus had his whiteboard with pro card written on it, and he used to do something similar. But it's definitely something that I just love the process so much, and taking it to stage is that ultimate kind of, let's see how we've really done over the past few years. I feel like I've had some good improvements, but you truly test yourself when you take it to stage, and the kind of characteristics that helps me develop, that I take into other areas of my life, I love. And the competitive aspect can be grueling, but testing and fun at the same time. And luckily I have a team now in terms of coaches on Revive Stronger, and Jess is competing next season. Pascal hopefully is going to make it to stage next season. There's always something that seems to hold him back. So to be able to do it with them and have like a team of supporters makes it all that much more fun. Ultimately, bodybuilding is such a selfish sport, but and in a selfish way, I'm enjoying to be able to share that journey with others, allow others to learn, look in, and I don't necessarily now do it for the same reason as I started doing it, but now I'm kind of hooked on that kind of process.
Right. Do you, and that was actually kind of my next question. Do you find like solace or solitude in the process? Do you find it calming? Like whenever you said you lost some clients, or maybe something shitty's going on, do you constantly find going back to the process and checking off the boxes on a daily basis and not worrying about the outcomes of things as much? Do you find that as a source of comfort in life?
Oh, so much. Yeah. I think I am one of the most like structured, routine, robotic individuals you will ever meet. Like everything in my life, like I'm not like you wouldn't think I'm like a perfectionist or anything, but I love structure. I love routine. I love just monotony. Like I thrive off that. And I think now and then I need to be broken away from it, and I need something to throw me a curveball to kind of experience that. And I also enjoy it, like Christmas or something like coming up. It's always like a bit like, have I planned my deload here? Or what am I going to do for training? But it's fine. But I love the day in, day out. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm achieving, and that structure and a plan as well. So like, I know I've got my kind of 3 mesocycles of, like I taught you through already. I have my 2 mesocycles of massing after this one. I have a primer phase to maintain, and then I'll enter a kind of back-to-back 4 mesocycles worth of cutting before I hit kind of stage, and then a reverse and all of that. And
you got to play it out, dude.
I love having the plan there.
Yeah.
And I didn't always have a plan when I first got into the gym, and I always felt lost. I don't know if you've ever, and also even if I have, like maybe I give myself an active recovery week or whatever it might be. And I like it at the start where I'm like, yeah, I can just kind of do what I like. And then I'm like, man, I really just want to know what I'm meant to be doing, like, and have objectives to like reach an outcome. I'm not one of those people that do well with like a limited structure and just kind of freeballing it. I need like something to keep me going in place.
Right, which is interesting, which I want to get to next, because that's kind of where I'm at. But real quick, some things that you were talking about there, and what I find with focusing on the process and like daily process goals, or like checking the boxes or whatever, and the monotony, like you said, it's an interesting paradox where it's actually much easier to do that, right? Like it's kind of like you don't have to think as much. You don't have to worry about where, like it takes much less willpower and brain power whenever you do have that consistency. So some people could see it as, oh, Steve has this amazing willpower and discipline and structure and everything like that. And of course, like I think that you do, but it's after you get over that initial hump of actually putting that into place for several days, weeks, months, etc. And then it's just like clockwork, right? So is that kind of where like one of the main reasons why you do have that structure? One, because of course it gives results, but then two, it actually does take a lot of the thinking out of it.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I think it's so hard when, and this came when I first was starting, when I didn't really know like what to follow, what plan to follow. I didn't understand training principles, nutritional principles. But once you have those, and you know, like if I tick those boxes day in, day out, long term, they're going to be the stepping stones to eventually get me to that overall goal I want to be. And it's like the kind of funny saying is always like, oh, am I there yet? Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Like the kid in the back of the car. It's like if they just enjoyed like playing their Game Boy or whatever and just got lost in that, they'd probably be there way sooner than they'd ever imagine. And that's the same with like, I even think about it with stuff like Instagram. Like I just post every single day and I'm not really thinking about it much. I'm just like, I need to post it. I need to post it. And like years down the line, it's like, oh, now you've got like a decent following. Oh, you can share links on your stories. And it's like, how did you get there? It's just like just posting every day.
Yeah.
It's just like literally, I just turned up every day. There's no strategy here apart from just consistently putting in that work. And it's the same with the gym. It's like, how do you suddenly like get big arms? It's like, I just kept training my arms like consistently, never didn't train them. And it's those sort of things. And I think that's why it's important to enjoy that process as well. And there is enjoyment from just knowing that, okay, I know my training and my nutrition. If I've done that today, I've grown muscle. Like it might not be very much. It certainly isn't much at the moment, but I know that what we know about nutrition and kind of training science,
right?
If you've achieved certain things, you're going to be growing, and there's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
and there's something incredibly satisfying about that.
Yeah,
same with fat loss as well.
You know what's interesting is I loved your post from today actually. Like it was kind of a whenever I read the very first sentence, I kind of imagined that meme or whatever whenever you like turn black and white and then the shades drop down over. Like the very first line of Steve's Instagram post today was him like flexing, looking jacked as fuck as usual. And then it said the very first sentence was, "Results are my preference." And I was like, there's something. Yeah, you want to speak to that? Because I love that saying. It's just like a mic drop moment.
Yeah, that I didn't really. It was great because this was a discussion I was having with Mike Israetel, who comes on the podcast regularly and does these Q&As with me, and they're so much fun because like I've met Mike several times in person, and I find him really interesting to talk to, and he's just unbelievably intelligent. So, and we think very similarly. Our methodologies are very similar because, I mean, he's incredibly bright. So I do a lot of the things he's doing because he's ultimately right on that path of kind of the truth and getting closer to that. So yeah, it was a question came up about like, if you could do a study, what would you do? And he talked through this like kind of training to failure study and like comparing it to reps in reserve and everything. And it eventually got to a point where it was kind of talking through it like, I already feel like we've got a lot of evidence to support that you don't have to train to failure. And ultimately, if you train to failure all the time, you're probably going to short exchange yourself because there's a dose response relationship with volume and hypertrophy. And if failure training is just way more exhausting, and there's plenty of evidence already to support that. So he's like, that's the study I would do, but mainly just to put a kind of nail in the coffin. And he was like, a lot of people kind of want to do these various things because it's their preference. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I have heard it said that, oh, you can kind of train to failure with less volume, you get more stimulus, more fatigue, or you can leave some reps in reserve. You just have to do more and it's down to preference. And he was like, those kind of statements frustrate him because at the end of the day, it's not just preference, there's also cost benefit to that. And the cost of training to failure all the time is probably finding that you're not going to get as much hypertrophy. And that's why I kind of came out with saying results are my preference. Like for sure, training to failure is really, it's a fun thing to do. It's very easy. You don't have to think as hard, like in a set to control it with good technique. And train to failure, it's really hard. You have to think, but you don't have to think about kind of leaving reps in reserve. You have to think a little bit more and think about the longer term plan. And so like I was just essentially saying, I will follow anything that looks like it's going to provide the best results because that is my ultimate preference, no matter what short-term wants I have. And I apply that to loads of things in life. Like Like, I don't know, a lot of the time for dessert, maybe I'd want to have a cheesecake because that's definitely like a tasty thing. It's probably my preference. But sometimes I might choose a fruit salad because ultimately fat loss might be my preference at that particular point in time. And I'm satisfied in eating the fruit salad, knowing I'm going to get fat loss today, than eating that cheesecake and being satisfied in the short term that, oh, I achieved my preference. That was fun. But then being like, man, I just kind of cut my entire deficit today. I'm not going to lose fat. And some people might not be like me. That's totally fine. But I'm very sure with what I want to achieve from my nutrition and training. And that's why, for me, whatever gives me the best result, I'm going to follow that. No matter if I don't know if I want to say hate it, but even if I'm not like totally like happy that that's what I want to do in that moment.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. And it comes, that's kind of a post that I made the other day. On my Instagram, it's like, cause one of my clients asked me, how do I know if I'm overeating? For example, like if I'm out getting a meal with friends that I genuinely want to enjoy, and I don't want to feel guilty about, like I want to just enjoy, like have a free meal, enjoy the foods that I'm having, but then I also don't want to feel guilty about eating over my calories for the day because of these goals that I have. And I said that I kind of look at it two ways. One would be from like, okay, my priority for this meal is fat loss. It's health, it's muscle gain. So it's like, if that's the highest priority to me right now, then yes, having that meal would be quote unquote overeating, like objectively, because you have this calorie goal that you're trying to hit, and objectively you overate based off of that calorie goal. It doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It doesn't mean you're bad or anything like that. But objectively, that's what you did, right? Because you said fat loss was your priority. But if you flip that and be like, the goal of this meal, the priority of this meal is just pure enjoyment with friends and just more lifestyle, right? Like I just want to enjoy it with friends. And then that's the main priority for that meal. I was like, then you're just eating, right? Because then it's just like, if that's what you chose as your highest priority, then enjoy it guilt-free and then move the fuck on, like the meal after that. So what I think is important is what you said is making sure that priority is clear before you have that cheesecake or the fruit salad, and it's clear to you fat loss is the higher priority than the enjoyment of the cheesecake in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to coach people through it, where you've actually given them the options, because a lot of people seem to want a coach that's going to dictate them, or they think they want that, but in reality they don't. Because at the end of the day, we all do all of this, and I'm the way I am because I get the most enjoyment from being that way. And so you want them to ultimately have the most enjoyable experience. And for a lot of people, their preference will be like, I just don't want to have to think about things too hard during this meal out with friends. I just want to enjoy the time with them. And that's fine. But they can't then complain the next day when, I don't know, the scale weight's up, or
right.
They have to extend the fat loss by a week. Like, it's like, you can't just like have your cake and eat it. Like those sort of things
right.
don't exist.
Yeah.
I love the saying from Lyndon Purcell from JPS. Here's, for every gimme, there's a gotcha. So it's like, you got to give and take. There's like, for me, like cool, I get fat loss, but I'm eating a fruit salad, for God's sake, whatever it is. Like, there's always something there. So just knowing what you ultimately want, because a lot of people haven't spent time long enough. Like, they think I'm with a coach, so I have to always have fat loss. But if you're like, no, you could chill out today a little bit if you would like to, that's okay. Like, we can still achieve fat loss in the long run. You can get to your goal. There's no deadlines here.
Right.
And so for some people, and I do that with a lot of my clients, they're like, okay. Like, because they look up to me maybe, and they're like, I need to be like Steven. Like, you don't have to be like me. Like, I'm very much got things dialed into an extreme, but for a reason.
Yeah.
And you can dial that back to what's appropriate for you. Coming back to like flexible dieting, like never maybe being off, but you can always dial it in and dial it back to what's appropriate at the given time.
Yeah, and that segues perfectly into the thing that I wanted to talk about, that I mentioned to you in the email that I've been obsessed with, and this is going to be an interesting dance between what you just said about results or your preference, and then sometimes you don't want to have to choose between your preference or getting the results. But I'm trying to, with the stuff that I do, I'm trying to figure out fitness-wise how we can put in the least amount of work possible and get the best results possible. I call it fitness essentialism, playing off the book Essentialism. So doing less but better, and it's essentially just like hyper focusing on that 80% of shit that works. So just to give context, the people that I typically work with are more so in the intermediate range. So there are people who are still trying to consistently hit that 80% the majority of the time, right? They're trying to hit the big rocks the majority of the time. So I call it the slacker's guide to being productive, like, right, with fitness. So like if you need some time to think about this, I can go over a few of what I determine as fitness essentialism. But it's basically like what I have here is hold on, let's see. Oh yeah. So if you had to choose a couple things with your training and then a couple things with your diet, like what would you tell somebody like, hey, if you get these things right, then 80% of your results are going to fall into place?
Yeah, I have a bias towards doing more and aiming for the maximum versus the minimum. But so I might already overstep what I think is required for minimum results, because possibly you could do less than this, but I consider some of the things maybe that I would say here to be, for a lot of people, doable on a daily basis, I think. So
right.
I would say outside of training and nutrition, at least, because I'm obsessed with it and we've already spoken about it, sleep. So there's just, it's a kind of foundation to both of them. I always know if someone's got great training, I'm like, if your training's going great, you're probably getting great sleep, probably great nutrition. But if your training's not going great, nutrition, like both of those can get hurt by sleep. So I really see sleep as the foundation. And it's not like you can get really complicated about it. You can talk to people with PhDs, and I've done that a lot. But when you boil it down, I just want someone to not be reliant on caffeine and to feel well rested through the day, not feeling like they have to nap. And when they wake up, not feel like energized and sprightly, but not so that the alarm is waking them up every day, maybe. So
right. So what would you say? Would you say 7 hours? What's kind of your benchmark there?
So I love, as a standard, for kind of more maximum 8 non-negotiable hours in bed. But for someone else, as long as they're getting, I think if you're getting 6 hours for most people as a minimum sleep time, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Anything less than that, I start getting concerned, just because, and I imagine they start relying on caffeine, feeling like they need to nap, those sort of experiences. So whilst it's a very easy thing to do, right? But it's passive. It's not like you need to go do your training. You can't go and sleep. You're just kind of like, you just kind of have to let it happen to you.
Right.
Most people can schedule in that amount of time. So I think it still fits within the kind of essentialism thing.
Right.
I don't think someone has to go and buy the blue light blockers and, like, I don't know, schedule their supplements and all of these details. They're not going to do them a great deal. But if they just have a bit of chill out time before bed, make sure they have 8 hours of time to be in bed and make their room like a cave, cool, dark, quiet, they're going to achieve, like, again, most of the results they could possibly want for sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then maybe not using caffeine like late in the day, because that hurts.
that definitely helps as well. Okay, so we've got sleep. I want to know though, with training. So like let me run through real quick just a few of the ones that I have down for fitness essentialism. So I have fitness essentialism and then nutrition essentialism. Okay. And so like for training essentialism, it's going to be like perform mostly compound lifts. I feel like that's a pretty good idea for most people to do, right? The second training essential would be track something, right? So we need some type of how are we determining if we're making progress or not? How do we know if what we're doing is working or not? So I think tracking something, I think, is important as far as body composition goes. So this could be scale weight, this could be measurements, this could be the belt, the common belt that you normally wear on a regular basis. This could be pictures, or it could be a combination of all of them, right? Another one would be, another training essential would be getting stronger over time. I feel like that's a pretty good thing to do to to make sure that you're consistently building muscle over time, right? And then the last training essential is make your workouts fun, right? So, and then whatever that kind of, as long as you can kind of hit those other essentials, and then also make it fun, I think that novelty, and again, if results are your preference, maybe results are fun. So it's just like you can determine what that means. But so I just wanted to give you those to kind of get you where my head's at. And I'm just like, if they can do those main 4 things, I think that they're going to get 80% of the way. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I just ask, is this for muscle growth? I'm assuming.
Yeah. I would say muscle growth or fat loss, because I don't with training for fat loss and muscle gain, it doesn't get anything too crazy different. At least I don't think, unless you have some type of expertise or input to say there. Yeah, I would say for muscle gain, fat loss, either one.
Yeah, I think I just say for training for fat loss or muscle gain, as long as it's not strength, basically, that's the one I was trying to rule out, or like, I don't know, CrossFit or something different.
Sorry, this is, yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm an idiot. Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
The only thing I think, by making sure that you're progressing and like measuring that, you're kind of making that ensures a lot of things have to be right. And all I would say is like specificity for me is like the biggest principle for training, and just make it like, don't train probably less than 5 repetitions most of the time on those big compound lifts. But I think focusing on those big compound lifts and getting stronger on those over time in that 5+ repetition range, then you're kind of guaranteeing you're doing enough volume, you're guaranteeing you're training hard enough. And these are things you then don't have to think about as hard. So yeah, I think just including that kind of specificity of getting stronger in the 5+ repetition range over time, I think kind of guarantees a bunch of good stuff there.
Yeah, and I think the other one that I just thought of while you were saying that, and I know that you would be a fan of as well, is managing fatigue, right? Because everything that I said there, you can do all of those, but then you can still be training to failure every single day, and then you can, it can kind of fuck things up. So like, as far as the simplest way that people can do it, the way that I do it, I think kind of naturally, is simply kind of starting my training block like 3 reps in reserve for every single exercise, and then next week I do 2 reps in reserve, and then the week after that I do 1 rep in reserve, and then the one after that I do 0 reps in reserve. So it's like, that's kind of the simplest way for me. And again, I'm not trying to maximize everything as much as possible, but I think just for the layman person listening to this, I think that that's something that they could understand, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, and that's how you described it there, is basically how I train.
Okay.
And the only way I'd simplify it further, if I could, would be like, when you first get into the gym and you train to the point where repetitions get hard, they slow down, and you feel like you've definitely trained that muscle group. So you don't leave the gym after like leg training and being like, you could do sprints with your like son and daughter or something. It's like, no, you need to be feeling like you've done some decent work there. Not completely wrecked by any means, like you've done good work. And then every week thereon, like, do a little bit harder, add a repetition or add a little bit of load. And by consequence of doing that each week, you eventually hit your kind of 0-1 rep in reserve after multiple weeks of training. And that for me is the simplest, like, start hard, get harder over time. So yeah, that's the only difference. Or it's the same thing, just maybe simplified.
What about, okay, so that's pretty simple. And the reason, and I think it's important also to give the reasoning behind this. And Mike was the one who said this in such a simple way, like he does, in a pithy way. And he was talking about how it's just, people can think they need to maximize their performance or the amount of muscle they grow in a single session, but that limits the subsequent sessions, right? So people are thinking, how can I build the most muscle possible in this one session? But then they don't realize that they need to be thinking about how much muscle can I grow over an entire month, right? Or an entire mesocycle. So it's like, if you go 10 out of 10 on Monday with your workout as far as effort goes, and you go absolutely crazy, and then you wake up Tuesday and you're super sore, right? And you still maybe have to train similar muscle groups, or you're maybe even still sore on Wednesday and you've got to train those same similar muscle groups again. It's like, well, your performance is going to be affected on those days. So then it was stupid for you to go a 10 out of 10 on Monday, and you need to dial it down to maybe a 7 or 8 for at least that first week, and then you dial it up every week thereafter.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I guess in terms of training principles, specificity, and then the next would be overload and progressive overload. And you can achieve overload in many ways, but if you want to achieve progression on that overload, you need to leave something there. And that's where that secondary thinking comes in, where it's like, yeah, you need to do a good enough job today to kind of create a stimulus for muscle growth, but also leaving enough there so that when you come back again, you can overload again. So when you take it like all the way to the kind of Icarus to the sun, and you are like right up there, it's like, where are you going to go next week? You're going to jump into the sun. Whereas if you just get close enough where you get a little bit of tinging on the feathers or whatever, then next week you can push a bit further. I don't know why Icarus and the sun is the goal, but
I like
that's kind of the overload principle, but allowing for that progression. And Brian Miner's done a great job on explaining kind of the overload threshold. People are worried that they're not training hard enough. It's like, well, we know a few things. If your relative intensity is 4 RAR or less, then, and it's almost any rep range at this point, but probably 5+ is a good way to kind of be up to 30 maybe, then like you're in that threshold, and anything harder than that is now just kind of potentially better. I know Mike said 2 RAR is probably the golden zone where you're growing the most, but you can still benefit from starting less than that, and you could benefit from going past that. It's just on average, you're kind of mostly working with on average 2 RAR. So yeah, it's definitely well said, where people forget about the progression on that overload. That's certainly how I started training, was just like failure. And that works when you're like that new to the gym, where you can adapt and respond and recover that quickly. But once you're as advanced as like many years in the game, you'll just start hitting a brick wall, and you'll have to deload, or you'll deload for yourself. Your body will deload for you. You'll get injured or something, or your technique will shift into a negative kind of position.
Yeah. And so real quick, for people who hear like RIR and be like, what the hell are they even talking about in the first place? I think my audience is weird, because some people are going to understand what RIR is, and then some people aren't. And I think that's totally okay. But basically RIR is reps in reserve. And so if you hear him say, Mike said that 2 RIR is kind of the standard. If you think about it on an effort scale of 1 to 10, and 10 being like absolute failure, like super fucking hard, basically, staying around that like 7 to 8 mark the majority of the time is going to is going to allow you to accumulate the most volume and total work in the gym over time. And then going above that occasionally is good as well. And then eventually going hard for a certain amount of weeks, and then backing down a little bit, having a deload. How much? Just real quick, just as a general rule of thumb, how often do you have or maybe the person that we're talking about in this situation, more of an intermediate, somebody who isn't doing crazy amounts of volume or anything like that? When would you have them regularly deload, or take a week where they back down a little bit?
So I think the kind of most correct answer would be when their fatigue is starting to outweigh their fitness gains. So their performance is starting to either plateau or potentially even drop. But in that scenario, if I was thinking, for the people I train, it's often like the 5th or 6th week for like most people. They're needing that deload. In that scenario, I could see people going up to like 10 weeks, probably not more than 10, I imagine. But yeah, if you're not accumulating like set volume and you're keeping that a bit lower, so your stress, you can dissipate that a bit quicker, I could see them not needing it for like a couple of months for sure.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes with my clients, it just happens where they have a vacation, or they just like, they fall off track in general. I'm like, well, no need to deload, because you kind of just did that on accident. So it works out fine, but we can just take that into consideration and then move on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then as far as measuring progress over time, measuring strength in the gym, and what I mentioned, or I try and hammer home, because again, I'm going for as simple as possible, but still getting the best results. I said, typically what I do with my clients is maybe 2, I like to track the main compound lifts. I don't worry too much about the accessory lifts. What I try and do, sometimes I even get it as simple as like, okay, let's pick 1 upper body lift and 1 lower body lift, and let's measure that strength over the next 12 weeks, right? So for example, if they're trying to get bigger shoulders, or they're trying to improve their upper body mass and things like that, but they want to prioritize shoulders, I'm like, okay, let's do some type of military press. Let's focus on that. And then if they want to do quads, then it's like, okay, squats, leg press, something like that. But do you think it would be, again, 80% enough to pick 1 to 2 main compound lifts for maybe upper body and lower body? So like so it would be like a squat and a deadlift maybe, or something, or a squat and an RDL. Would that be enough to ensure, okay, you're making pretty consistent progress over time?
I think so. The tricky part of that is, I guess, for someone who's intermediate, they could maybe gain on those movements every 2 to every 4 weeks, maybe. As you get more advanced, it becomes every month, every couple of months, every 6 months, every year or something.
Right.
So it becomes difficult. And with the big compound lifts, the only other kind of confounder is the fact that they're quite skill based, in that you can become more skilled at the lift and not have gained any muscle, but have just got better at, kind of more efficient at doing the lift.
Can you give a quick example of what you're talking about there? Because that's an important point that people don't think about enough.
So I think the way I would analogize it is like riding a bike or a car or something. A bike's a very easy one, where when you first learn it, it's like you're struggling to balance and you can go at a certain speed. But after a while, kind of just you get better skilled at riding that bike. And like neurologically, like you're just firing on all cylinders, and the kind of, I don't know the right kind of biological terminology.
Like efficiency, basically.
Your like neural wiring would be my like really non-great biological understanding of it, where it's just like everything's just like linked together. So your body just gets super efficient at doing that process, and you could have been the same fitness the entire time. Like you haven't got any fitter during that period of time. You've just learned how to do it better. So that can happen with many kind of big compound lifts. I do think there's a limit to that. Like, I don't think like once you've been doing it for like months and months and months, you probably aren't getting more and more skilled at it. So I struggle to say that you couldn't use those lifts as a marker. I'm like, if you did 100 kilos for 10 reps for a couple of sets, like 6 months ago, now you can do 110, man, I'm pretty sure you've probably got bigger quads, bigger glutes, that sort of thing. So I think that probably does cover quite a lot of bases. I know James Krieger has theorized that a good marker for kind of maybe a better marker that removes the skill component is using non-technical lifts. So rather than a back squat, you might choose like a hack squat, where it's like, well, there's only so much skill you can gather on a hack squat, because it's just knee flexion.
It's kind of fixed. It's a more fixed movement pattern. Yeah.
So then if you went 100 for 10 to 110 for 10, I mean, you probably you're almost guaranteed your quads got bigger, especially if visually you're looking better, you weigh more, you've been purposely massing. Like I almost would guarantee it. Whereas on the back squat, there could be a small argument where you've got more skilled at that movement. But if it's locked in like a machine, especially across multiple sets,
right?
Particularly.
Interesting. Okay. That gives me a whole different way of kind of looking at it. But that makes sense, because you kind of take out the neurological adaptations. At least you shorten the amount of time it takes to get those adaptations with something fixed. So like a hack squat or a leg press, for example. But I would still make sure that it is something like a more of a compound movement, close to the main compound lift as much as possible. Like leg extensions, I think might be okay, but something like a hack squat or a leg press may be better. Potentially.
Potentially.
Sure. I don't know either. But this is
muscle
fun,
growth is so hard to actually measure, like, unless you're getting muscle biopsies and this sort of thing. Like, the best tool we have so far is like a DEXA scan, and that's percentages off. So it's all estimates.
Yeah.
That's why, like we talked about, that process and trusting in it is so important. Just in the knowledge of, because a lot of people, like, muscle growth is so slow that, I mean, if you're someone who needs short-term results, you're going to really struggle with muscle growth, because it's a hard thing to measure over time. And that's where performance, I think you have to rely on performance as your main guide, because like your skill is part of that, and you can try and convince yourself, I just got really, really skilled at it. But I think probably if you're getting stronger with the same technique for reps, like you're in a good spot.
Right. So would you say, so like an upper body example of that, do you think it'd be something maybe like I'm thinking of like dead stop Smith machine rows, for example, like bent over rows, like using the Smith machine, pausing each rep,
Yeah.
and then as long as you're getting stronger on that over time, it's probably and keeping the technique static throughout that entire time. It's probably a good chance that you're building a bigger back in the
Yeah, I
process.
think so. I think that's a
Yeah,
good one.
interesting. That's very interesting because I didn't think about that component of the main lift. But that gives me something to think about. See, this is why I knew I wanted to talk about this, because this is the stuff that I like to coach people on or put in my products or something. And this makes a little bit more sense because I want to make sure that I simplify things, but I also don't want to make it untrue. Like I don't want to simplify and dumb things down, and then it actually does the negative of what I'm trying to do. I could have worded that way better, but you guys get what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying, and credit to you for that, because it would be very easy to go down that route of just like, yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. It makes sense to me. It's going to make sense to most people. Let's just use that.
Yeah.
Or do you want it to be correct?
Right. I'm trying to that's what I did with my bodybuilding background, and then like the science base, and as a registered dietitian, like I'm trying to filter all of that stuff into things that more of intermediate lifters and people who still want to maybe just get the 80% right the majority of the time.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that they are still doing the right shit that is actually going to give them the biggest bang for their buck. Right. Okay, what are we on time? Okay, we're getting close. Real quick with nutrition, I want to knock these out real quick. So some of the ones that I say for nutrition essentials, first is going to be gain awareness. So you have to have some type of baseline, right? You have to figure out what you're doing and then how to adjust from there. So the first nutrition essential is awareness. The second essential is, I say protein first, then nourish. Right. So for each meal, you're going to focus on protein mainly. And then after that, you nourish in terms of some type of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, some type of fiber source typically. Right. Protein first, then nourish. The third essential is going to be only focus on the next 5 minutes, right? So this is something to eliminate overwhelm, and to people can get so caught up in, okay, what do my macros need to be for this entire week? Or like, do I need to change this? Do I need to, I'm worried about all the meals that I just missed or something like that. So only focus on the next 5 minutes. That keeps people kind of more in the moment. And then the last one is going to be fail fast and never miss twice. So this is going to be more so back to the consistency thing, making sure that people don't get caught up in one, unhealthy or unnutritious meal. They can move fast, and then never missing twice is basically never having 2 shitty meals in a row. So yeah, that's kind of my word vomit. If there's anything else that you would add to those, please feel free to let me know.
No, I really like it, because I think I like the nourish, because I think a lot of people, especially body composition like wise, kind of don't focus on that. Whereas if you get nourished right and you eat your fruit and veg, your whole grains, you're probably getting a lot of the other stuff right, like calories, like
yes.
Health, all those other things. Performance is going to be better. You're just going to feel better for it. Protein, obviously, like anyone listening will know how important protein is. So making sure your meals are focused around kind of those fruits, veggies, proteins, whole grains, I think that sets people up really, really nicely. Maybe the only thing I'd add is kind of like you had tracking progress with the other, maybe trying to track a body weight measurement in terms of like a weekly average, seeing it go up or down, because then that default calorie is going to be in the right ballpark for you.
Yes, and that's actually what the first one, gain awareness. That one I threw that one in there as well. And so yeah, that's the main thing, because you have to track something at least for a couple months, and to make sure that you kind of have the gist. If you want to not track calories forever, right? You can kind of eyeball things, you can guesstimate things, but then you still have to have that progress indicator as far, and going back to it's got to be the scale or the pictures or the belt or measurements. You got to have something to be like, okay, is what I'm doing working? So
I think particularly for fat loss, the scale is going to be pretty helpful, particularly for guys. For women, it can be frustrating for them to use that. And for some of them, they want to focus on kind of feeling better and looking better and clothes fitting well, just because there's nuances and details that can throw them off if they haven't got a coach or a full understanding of all of that. But for guys, like if your goal is fat loss, a month later you should be weighing less.
Yeah.
Whereas women, it can fluctuate on that kind of basis due to the menstrual cycle. So yeah, I agree with that.
Right on, dude. This has been wonderful. Real quick, I like asking this question just for positivity reasons, and also I'm just curious, like what are you excited about in the future, or like what are you excited about right now, maybe on a day-to-day basis, or what's coming up that you're stoked about besides your robot-like tendencies with this competition prep coming up?
So I'm trying to be excited. I actually know I am definitely excited I have a week off around Christmas, so I don't think I've taken a week off this year from work. So I've actually got a whole week off, and I'm deloading, so I don't even need to think about the gym.
I love how sorry to cut you off. I love how you said, I think I have a vacation planned, like I have a week planned off after Christmas. Like you aren't your own boss, and you aren't like, yes, I can have that time off if I want to. Like someone else is making your schedule. That's so funny. It's so great.
Someone else has to force me, even if it's the government, to have vacation. Yeah. So yeah, I have a week off. So I have a full week off from next week on Wednesday, I think. So I'm excited for that. I don't know what we're doing because COVID and visiting family is a bit tricky. So I know whatever it is, it's going to be time spent with Charlotte and Ada, and maybe have some gifts and stuff, and enjoying some good food and just chilling. So that's probably the thing I'm short-term most excited about. I have other things, like I'm very excited for Mike Israetel and Renaissance Periodization. They're releasing their hypertrophy ebook at sometime very shortly.
Yeah.
I know I've spoken to him several times about it. He's like, yeah, it should come out in December. And I don't know, maybe it's January now. So we'll have to see when that comes out. And then I'm just excited for next year as a whole, for like the world in general, in terms of just it being a much more positive year. And I think it hopefully really will be. Because I mean, anything has to be brighter than the year just gone.
The bar is set pretty low after 2020.
So yeah, I'm excited for all of that to come.
Cool. Yeah, man. I think London and the US have both been interesting on the whole COVID thing, and that's a podcast for another day that you or I probably won't touch. Actually,
I don't want to. I'm not. I don't know enough about it to be able to say anything wise.
I 100% concur. I'm good on offering my backseat opinions on things I don't understand. I'm still trying to figure out the shit that I do think that I'm somewhat of an expert in. So it's like, nonetheless, virology and economics and all these other nonsense. But anyway, again, we'll cover that next time. But cool. Where can people find out more about you, and if they want to get involved with the whole community that you built?
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me on. Always a pleasure talking to you, Matt. And if people want to find, Revive Stronger, revivestronger.com is where our kind of coaching is, the members site. You can find the podcast on there, or the Revive Stronger podcast on like Spotify or any kind of YouTube if they want to see us kind of visually. And then I'm Revive Stronger over on Instagram, and that's where I'm most kind of commonly active each day. So if people want to reach out over there, they can do. Thank you again.
Yeah, perfect. And I'll put all of those links in the description. I want to say bye off air for like 2 minutes. But Steve, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sure we'll do it again, hopefully sometime soon.